under our first module, again, which is called creating a high performance, which is what you do first in corporate, right? You build your team, right? I don't know how many of y'all have been at this level or not, but if you have, feel free to speak up because I'll share my experiences so this will make sense. But I also need you to share your experiences if you've been down this route before, running a project. Within creating a high-performing team with the course content, the first thing you do is build your team. That makes sense, right? It didn't used to say that with the old exam. The next thing you want to do is define team rules, because once you get a group of people together, you need some rules in place. If you're autocratic and working by yourself, that's easy. But just because you think you're cool, everybody else doesn't. So there has to be team ground rules amongst 15, 20 people. Then you want to negotiate project agreements. Well, what type of agreements? We'll get to that in a second. You as a servant leader and as a transformational leader that's over that project, you want to empower your team and the stakeholders along with it. We'll talk about the distinction between those. And there's not, well, then you want to train your team members and your stakeholders, you meaning you, the project manager. Then you want to engage and support virtual teams, which we've already done now because of COVID, right? And then your job is to also build a shared understanding about whatever project that you're governing or being a servant leader to, right? So this is our module, and these are the topics under that module. There's 7 of them. This lesson is called Empower the Team Members and Stakeholders. All right, so we got them built up. We got rules in place, both ground rules and rules for beginning rules for our agreements that we would negotiate on. And now it's time to empower the team, which is kind of lends itself back to that servant leader and transformational leader, which PMI is, again, is incorporating into the traditional role instead of being an autocratic role. Some of the deliverables and tools for empowering our team members. Team decision-making tools, which incorporates brainstorming, fist of 5. You'll see some of these terms moving forward. I'm glad we just went over the agile or adaptive system. Some of these tools and techniques, mostly tools, they're over in the adaptive side of the house. You keep hearing me say that again: predictive, waterfall, traditional. That's what we're studying in PMP, but it also incorporates adaptive frameworks, the agile, Scrum, and Kanban, and so forth. Well, some of these terms now you're going to start seeing, if you know anything about traditional project management, they don't match. Well, fist of 5 is one of them, right? It's a common use of how to vote. When they say team decision-making tools, when a team is brainstorming, you can vote. I mean, there comes a time when you got to vote on something, right? Sometimes it's yay or nay, or fist. They call it fist of 5, right? You can hold up either 5 fingers or 1 fist, depends on what your team wants to use. I mean, a closed fist could mean I'm all in. An open fist could mean I'm against it totally, right? So that's what fist of 5. And you got Roman voting, which is the numerical system. It's 9-1. So actually majority rules. Then you have polling. There's a tool out there called planning poker. This is also on the adaptive side. You're not going to need to know, you're not going to need to know how to do these or use them with the exam, because 90% of the exam is based around traditional, predictive, or waterfall, but it does have elements of the adaptive frameworks. Dot voting and retrospective. Now you know what retrospectives are. They're just lessons learned under Agile, Scrum, and the rest of it. What should come out of using these tools are actual decisions. Decisions on whatever needs to be decided on, right? So that you can make comprehensive and intellectual decisions, meaning you and management. Other things that come out of this is estimates. Well, estimates on what? Time, cost, right? So these are ways to get to that. In other words, you're empowering your team members and stakeholders and decision making, but not only decision making, other realms of project management. We'll get to that in a second. Anyway, these are some of the tools and outcomes that should come from that. Well, these are the tools that you use. These are the outcomes over here on the left side. Okay. We talked about this earlier about our team strengths, right? So as we already know, when forming the teams, we have to understand all the competencies of individual members, as well as our team, right? Knowledge, skill, working practice, how they are as a person. I mean, these are things, I mean, yeah, you're not going to want to document that, but as project managers, as leaders, you do take mental notes, right? And that's where that emotional intelligence comes in. Yeah, you're not going to document that some person is a butthole sometime, right? But you do keep a mental note of that. Why? If conflict comes up, even a conflict with you, you know how to deal with that person, right? All this comes with project management. I mean, it really does. This is more about dealing with people than it is about processes, meaning project management. And I put it in three different terms because you're all leading. Somewhere in your career, you're going to be asked to run a project, lead a project. It's just going to happen, whether you're PMP certified or not. It's just going to happen because all of our industries are made up of projects. That's how things come about, right? Having said that, think of a project manager, you know, if you haven't already, but these are my little terms, and because I've been through, and I'm a sports guy, so I think of things in terms of sports. But from a football standpoint, and I'm a huge NFL fan, Dallas Cowboys, by the way. But from a sports standpoint, on the defensive end, you're the middle linebacker. You're the coach, you're the team leader on the defensive end. You're the middle linebacker. On the offensive end, you're the quarterback of your team, right? You're pushing them you're the one driving them down the field, right? So I think of it in terms of that. Also, if you think of a big ranch with cattle, well, you're that ranch hand that's kind of guiding that herd of cattle. You know how hard that is. I mean, entire herd, you're dealing with people. So think of yourself, you're herding cattle. I hate to put it in those terms, but that's just the way it is, right? So in order for you to maximize, you know, your skill set technically as a project manager and those soft skills, you're going to need to know your team and the individual team members, right? Some stuff you can speak publicly on, and some stuff you can't, right? So again, understanding your team and team strengths, and you can use the technique. We talked about this before called SWOT analysis. Companies use it all the time when it comes to risk and things like that. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Do the same thing with your team. Okay. We talked about decision-making tools just a little earlier. Why do we need those? Because we're going to be estimating decisions around the activities that we use to build whatever it is we're building. We're going to use decision-making tools around risks that comes along with building those outcomes, and a lot of other challenges around cost, time, things like that, right? There's a term that got introduced to me when I got my DASM, Discipline Agile Scrum Master. I got that early last year or something like that, but it's an addition over the Agile when I got my Agile certification, and it's called way of working. In other words, every team has to figure out their way of working, right? And that's why some of those adaptive teams are so small, between 3 and 9 people. Now, when you got a team of 15, 20, 30, and 40 people, you eventually kind of dictate to yourselves the way of working, but those teams are normally in traditional project management. The adaptive teams are normally smaller, and you can figure out your way of working pretty quick. So that's a new term that's out there called way of working, right? And going again back to what we spoke about earlier about conflicts, again, those team ground rules, they're going to become extremely relevant as the project moves forward on how we conduct business with each other. Another technique that you're going to come across is something we already do. Wherever you work at, you do this with your team members. Brainstorm, come up with solutions on how to get from point A to point B. Simple as that, right? Other things that affect decisions is estimates. And that can be done in terms of time. It can be done in terms of money. Either way, you have to reach some kind of decision. So again, decision-making tools around estimates is prevalent. You'll see this probably won't be, this used to be on the old test. It's called 3-point estimate. Anybody ever used 3-point estimate? Anybody? Yes, no, maybe. I guess not.
No, I have
Not on my end.
Yeah. Well, this was huge on the last test, so I'll come back to it. It's going to pop up later on. Well, let me cover a little of it now. And it's used in time or schedule and cost, right? So we're sitting around, and, you're at the head of the table. This is in traditional, right? We're sitting at the head of the table and we're going to develop a pencil, right? And I'm going to say, ask someone, Kevin, how long is it going to take you and your team to get that eraser done, right? On a good day, nothing, well, hold on. On a good day, nothing is going on. Everything's perfect. Optimistically, how long is it going to take you to get that pencil done? Optimistically.
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay, good. So we got 2 weeks. If stuff goes wrong, it ain't working. Pessimistically, how long you think? That's what the P is for. How long you think it can take you? If everything just goes haywire, how many weeks?
Oh, we'll say 6.
6 weeks? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we got 2 weeks optimistically, 6 weeks pessimistically, but most likely, if everything's pretty moderately done, how long you think it's going to take, Kev?
We'll go in the middle. We'll go 4.
4. So we got 2 plus 4
4
plus 6, right? So that's 12 divided by 3. So what I'm going to put in the project schedule is going to take us 4 weeks to get that pencil done, that eraser done. That's what the 3-point estimate is for.
Oh.
Okay. So, however, on the adaptive side, no time estimate. So you're not going to get into this. On the old test, this was a lot. But you guys won't even run into this. But you do need to know what it is and why, right? But on the adaptive side, Agile, Scrum, Kanban, when it comes down to estimating tasks, meaning the developers estimating, again, you're building some on the Amazon, right? We're putting a new feature on Amazon. Well, they're not going to give you an actual time frame, nor does that mindset call for you to give a time frame. They don't do absolutes over there. They do what they call story points. And we'll talk about that a little later, right? You got enough right now on the Agile side. We'll get to story points later, right? And read that book. That's in there. So instead of using days, they use what they call story points. Here's an example of a story point. Say, for instance, we got, since Adam or no, Marilyn, if you're on, we got to give story points on 2 rooms, right? On a kitchen, we got to clean the thing, or 50 by 50 ballroom with nothing in it. We got to clean those rooms, right? Well, in my mind, and the greater the story points, the harder the task is, right? In my mind, I give that kitchen a 30. I give that 50 by 50 ballroom a 10. All I gotta do is put out a mop that floor. There's nothing in the way, but that kitchen, you got to empty out the cabinets. Then you got to have different types of tools, get all up in the corners. You see what I'm saying? It's harder to clean that kitchen than it is to mop a 50 by 50 foot floor ballroom. Make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Totally.
So they use story points on the adaptive side. Developers sit down and think, okay, you just want a web page? Do you want a web page that connects over to another web page? So if they're thinking in that, okay, that's 14 story points. If you just want the web page with nothing on it but a picture, okay, that's 2 story points. So that's the way they estimate things over there. On the traditional side, we estimate cost and time with absolutes. Well, this is going to cost $35, period. And Kevin and I just went through a scenario where what it's going to take to build that or develop that pencil. So it's absolute on the traditional, story points on the adaptive. Okay.
One that we used to use at the EPMO was t-shirt sizing.
Yes, that's another one.
Small, medium, large, extra large.
Yep.
Or 3XL. And it was, it was still very much an estimation, but it was at least would give you a point of reference, and everybody can think of what a t-shirt size is, and based on that have a good, a good starting point.
Yep. Well, if I had brought up I only brought up the Scrum process, but if I had brought up the Agile process, what she just spoke about, the t-shirt sizing, you use that on the front end of an agile process. Remember, it's high level estimating. Now you get it planning poker, and all that other stuff. That's if you're going after your agile certification. There's a ton of estimation tools out there, and t-shirt sizing is definitely one of them. But use it on the front end because it's easy, right? Small, medium, large. In our case, the ballroom will be small. That kitchen, that's a large. There's a lot of stuff to be done in there, right? But it may not look like it. Okay, it's only a 13 by 13 kitchen. Yeah, there's a lot of work in there, right? But yes, t-shirt sizing along with about 6 or 7 other estimation tools on the adaptive side is right there. Good point. Okay, so we can drive on from this one. We're used to this. Well, one of them anyway. That Gantt chart that we've all seen that, right? That's up top. That's traditional. Well, the agile or adaptive. One thing about this, the product backlog, and I'll show that to you tomorrow. You have enough for today to go from step 2. I already sent you the document, but it would look something like this. See all the little sticky notes on there? These represent features, and these features are actually user stories. I haven't shown you the video that says how to create a user story yet. We'll get to that tomorrow. But anyway, with a Gantt chart, we know, okay, whatever this is up here, I can't read it. Prepare outline. It starts on the 6th and ends on, now starts on the 1st, ends on the 6th. That's simple, right? But that's for traditional work. Now, when it comes to building like a website, like the Amazon thing, well, now we're breaking it down to user stories, right? So it's put in what we call product backlogs. And this is where we pull this stuff from, right? And then you have what we call working task boards, which could also look just like this. All right, and follow me close here. Let's say we've already pulled out what we're going to work on, and this is it. This column will be called to do or work to be done on this column. This column will be called work in progress, meaning what we're working on. This column will be called completed. This is work that has been completed. So this is our to-do list. We pull from here, start working on it. When we complete it, now completed could mean a lot of things, right? Depends on what they define it as. Complete could mean go from all the way from, okay, this thing works and it has been tested and it has the success criteria has been done by the end user. But it could mean something totally different in another group. So then we move it over to completed, depending on the criteria, right? So you keep going and going and going until you got all your user stories over here, right? So that's how they commit on the adaptive side on how much work is to be done. It's not time, it's already time boxed here. 2 weeks to do this, 2 to 4 weeks to complete everything. All right, 2 to 4 hours to actually do a retrospective. All right, so everything is time boxed over here. Here, it's dictated by, okay, it takes, like Kevin and I did, it's going to take 4 weeks to get that eraser done. Well, most of the time in traditional, it's not going to get done in 4 weeks. Something's always going to come up, right? Something's going to get in the way. You're going to run out of money. Somebody's going to add stuff, and you got to go through change control process, right? But here, and I think either Adam was kind of alluding to this. Okay, well, you said you only, I'm going to bring up an example. You only want to do we only want to do text talk in our first iteration. Well, what if the customer wants to add something to it? Well, then we pull something out. That's the negotiation part. That's how you don't go over time. See, cost, scope, well, time and cost are fixed in traditional, right? Well, scope is fixed. I'm going to bring up a triangle that shows that. But every time the customer in Agile wants to add something, we have to pull out something because we have to stay within those 2 to 4 weeks of kicking out value, if that makes sense, right? Retrospectives, we know what those are. Retrospectives on the traditional side are called what? If you've been listening up to this point, anybody? Team 2, somebody out of team 2. Retrospectives on the traditional side of the house are called what?
Lessons learned.
Yes. All right. Okay. So we want to cover this again. We skip over this. Now, There's a process to retrospectives. This will probably be on the exam, but if you just pay attention to the bold stuff up top, that'll get you there. All right, retrospectives, how they run. Well, your team comes in, just you and the team, not the product owner. All right, that's going to be in that agile practice guide that's attached to your PMBOK. Just you and the team. It's nobody else's business on lessons learned. So that's kind of the standard procedure. So your job is to kind of facilitate all this, not run it, but facilitate it, make sure it happens. They're going to run it, meaning the team. So you make sure everything is set up for this. So you set the stage, check in, process, activities, engage a team, right? And you kind of get them going. And this is where they, and you participate as well, but you kind of let them run it, gather and share data around team performance metrics, earned value analysis, things that they've incurred, doing that particular sprint, just that one sprint. And then they start, what was working? Oh, this worked pretty good. Well, what were some of the challenges? We got a whole list of challenges. Well, let's analyze this and figure out, okay, how can we make it better? Then we make decisions on, what we're going to bring to the next sprint. Then you close out, right? So every retrospective or lessons learned in the adaptive side, well, it kind of runs like that too, but retrospectives on the adaptive side, 5 stages, 5 phases, set the stage, gather and share data, generate insights, make decisions, and then close out. Okay. Everything we've talked about now is still under the column of creating and building a high performance team. So now that we're not finished yet, but now that you got an idea, and it was all a logical flow when you look back at it. When you start studying, just take one full, yourself, you take as much time as you want. I would take one full week and just study nothing but module 1, just that. I wouldn't even touch module 2 for a while. Just take one full week and study module 1. Go over and over again. Now you're going to have more than just this little slide deck to study. There's stuff over in PMBOK that I'm going to map you to that you need to read. I wouldn't read PMBOK from front to cover unless you want to take a good nap. But looking at certain objectives within PMBOK that matches this, that's what we're going to point to later on, but not now. Okay. Guidelines, I already told you I don't read those. So kind of take a look at the guidelines around evaluate demonstration of task accountability.